Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening, veteran Dave. And Pat's in the chat, though. Won't be joining us tonight, feeling a bit poorly. But anyway, welcome to the show. We'll get to Stuart in a minute, and we're gonna get 15 minutes off Stuart on the digital ID. He wasn't on last week, and I know that we've talked about this before, and it's an interesting thing. And he did a thumbs up when I mentioned it tonight. So we'll get to Stuart in a minute. But welcome to the show, everyone. Please like and share the stream. Thank you, Tommy Trump. Please, and if you want to get in contact with us, there's our admin email, and if you'd like to donate, there's our PayPal, and I'll put the link up in the chat anyway. We needed lots of leaflets, and we're very busy, but we'll get more into that. But anyway, so last week's stream, we had my mate Ramo on, and we talked about the digital ID. I'll give you a little brief at the beginning of what I said, and it's the same with a lot of the technologies that are coming out now. You know, we knew a lot of these would be bad or would lead to certain things, but technology is racing that way, and I think it's going to be very hard to like stay cashless. To stay with cash than rather a cashless society, the way banks are run. Maybe in the future, if we take over our economics, we can change that to a more cash society or keep it as it is. But at the moment, we're nowhere near there. But anyway, let's get on with this show. And Stuart, we did digital ID last week. What do you think?
I think the digital ID is a road to a full authoritarian state with full control over everything we see, we hear, we eat, we drink, we wear, lack of travel. Need I go on? There is so much that it entails to get into. It is full control. The digital ID is the first step. Once you've got a digital ID, then you can link everything to it. Your centralised, digitalised banking currency, which, again, when it was first talked about a couple of years ago, the government went, oh, you know, nobody will know what you're buying. Nobody will have control over it. And then you get told, even in the Houses of Parliament a couple of years ago, they were saying that there are backdoors ready for the control of currency. And once they control currency, they control everything. It's as simple as that. You know, in the plans for the Agenda 2130, which is all linked to your digital ID, you got your 17 sustainable goals to a lovely, wonderful world where you'll only be allowed to buy 3 items of new clothing a year. Ideally, they want you to eat no meat whatsoever. You can already see on UK labelling, they're now putting carbon credits on there to brainwash everybody to think that, oh, look, meat, it's red. Oh, it must be really bad for the environment. Oh, no, I can't eat that. This killed 270 million cows around the world. That'll bring everybody up, so we've all got stuff to eat. That the whole system is ridiculous. The travel plans, you know, you'll be lucky if you'll be allowed to travel out the country once a year, and that'll all be facial recognition, bio-digital IDs. It's not just facial recognition. You can cover your face. They know what's underneath it. They know the way that you walk. So there'll be no freedoms whatsoever. And, you know, the way it's going with social media, the crackdown that they're doing on that at the moment, you know, censorship everywhere, which has been creeping on for the last few years, but it's ever increasing. The social media, you know, we had last year over 12,000 people arrested for social media posts. That's just the ones that they're letting on about, because there are more. Why do you think that they reduced prisoner sentences by 40%, clearing out the murderers and rapists to make room for the naughty social memers because they're the ones that are going to bring society down. John, I did put up, gave you a couple of little photos that I sent through, and I think they're a very good illustration for what is planned, what is controlled by them, and there are so many things. There are more things than I can even speak of or even know about. You know, my knowledge is limited to what I can find on the internet. You know, I use different AIs to try and find corroborating evidence and official sources, so that when I put something online, I know that you've got a fair idea that it's pretty much true. You know, the AIs, they're still limited, and again, that's part of our digital future. They don't want us reading books. They don't want us going to the library. They want us accessing everything online that they control. And as you can see on here, that there's so many goals around there that they want. I mean, one thing I want to talk about is the lab grown meat. As I look on there, halfway down on the left hand side, what's it say? Franken lab meats. That's what's planned for us, because they don't want us eating cows and pigs and stuff like that, because that's out in nature, doing it normal. They want us eating Bill Gates and others lab grown meat. And if you look into what lab grown meat is, what was her name? There was a black woman in the 50s or 60s who developed a cancer that just wouldn't stop growing. They could cut lumps off of her, and next morning they'd be growing back. It's called everlasting cell lines. And they are the cells that are being used to grow lab-grown meat. So the lab-grown meat is taken from cancerous cell lines. I can't remember her name. I'll have to chuck it to you at some time, John, because that's one of the real big dangers. You know, we've been distracted with digital IDs, digital currency, all the social upheaval, but a lot of people are missing out on all the things that are going by the wayside. You know, smart street lights is another one. All your LED lights out there, digitally run, they digitally pulse, and they're negative for human health. And this is all part of the digital landscape that we are being pushed into. 24/7 surveillance. You know, I've been looking into radio signals and how bad they can be for you, like 4G, 5G. I didn't realise that they can already use all the Wi-Fi beams that are bouncing around and your own Wi-Fi router, and they will know, if using the proper technology, who's in your house. Not just how many people, but who they are, down to the detail that they can produce a digital format of that person, and they can find out everything about that person that's in your house. So not only have we got social media censorship, listening to us 24/7 with algorithms making up ways to lock us down, we've now also got a full digital prison where, if they want, they can see what we're doing in our house, listening to us. Smart TVs, phones, laptops, tablets, they've all got cameras on, they've all got recording devices. And you turn your phone off, leave it for half an hour in a conversation in a room, and pick on a couple of different subjects. Maybe things you might like to buy, for instance. Turn your phone on, 10 minutes later, you flick on something. No! There you go. That's what you were talking about. Isn't that nice and easy? Lovely and easy. And then Rather than have cash, just be digital. You won't even need your phone in the future because there'll be a little chip inside you, which will have everything on there. I mean, there's so many things that are linked to the digital weapon of warfare. You know, you can basically call it the internet of everything. You know, it'll be linked to, let's say you don't sign up to the digital ID, suddenly you won't be able to get your medical services. You won't be able to get your prescription. The prescription you need for all the poisons that they push into your body every day. In the water, in the medicines, in the air, in the food. And there's something on here, this one, lifelong learning. That sounds nice, isn't it? Nice and easy. With this digital ID, you'll have access to lifelong learning. Does that not mean full-on indoctrination for the rest of your life? Because you won't be able to access a book and go and search information yourself. It'll only be digitally available. It'll only be what the AI pumps out for you. And that it's not really widely known, but AI is being used to determine medical procedures at the moment and has been for a few years now. So AI will come up with a score on how likely it is that the medical intervention proposed is going to be successful or not. And if you tweak that little algorithm a little bit, it just brings down a couple of years here, a couple of years there. You know, you're 75, you've already got 5 points. The more points you got, the less likely you are to get your medical intervention that you need. And especially if you haven't signed up for your digital ID. I mean, I mentioned I'm flicking about here I'm just picking out things on here. I mean, we've got the online censorship laws. That's already in. Public-private partnerships. Public-private partnerships. That means it's not the public, it's not you and me and anybody who may be listening on here tonight. The public-private partnership is global stakeholder corporations that are taking over. There's no public about it, except it being the governments. So the governments, in line with big business and multi-international unelected boards, are going to be your public-private partnership. Everything you see, everything you touch will be commoditized. So everything is being given a value. The only thing that isn't being valued is us, you and me and every normal person in the world. Right, well, I think I've waffled on enough there, John. I'll let Paul and yourselves get in. Just before I do shut my mouth, anybody listening, be appreciative of any donations. If you can't afford a donation, still please look at our website, take a look at our policies. They are very, very common sense. And come lend a hand and come and join us.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you very much. Very good off Stuart there. We have got a 2-minute video to play, so I'll play that and then we'll get over to Paul.
The second scenario is the giant leap. We wanted to identify a small set of actions, a minimum viable product, to reach as many sustainable development goals in Europe's vision of a social and green region. We wanted to take a systems approach to explore if we can achieve an acceptable level of well-being for the global majority on a finite planet. We conclude that nothing less than the following 5 extraordinary turnarounds are needed to have well-being for all while respecting planetary boundaries. Ending poverty, addressing gross inequality, achieving full gender equity, transforming the food system and the way we eat, transitioning to clean energy and efficient energy. We argue that these 5 extraordinary turnarounds and the set of economic reforms that will drive them form the basis of a well-being economy. It is not a blueprint, but more of a guide for systemic transformation. In this scenario, poverty ends a generation earlier than too little too late. We see gender empowerment in 1 generation, not 10. We see a switch to healthier plant-based diets. There is still meat consumption, but at sustainable levels. And we have carbon dioxide emissions every decade to reach net zero by 2050. The economic model everywhere is circular, regenerative, and efficient. Material consumption of unsustainable resources is reined in, fossil energy phased out, and we see a significant redistribution of wealth. In this scenario, we introduce a universal basic dividend operating like a universal basic income, with dividends coming to all people, sharing the wealth of the global commons and public goods. Who's taking the wealth now? It is not properly redistributed. This is not utopic. This is what is fair and just and what a society in transformation is all about. Why do we think this is important? We know the giant leap will be disruptive. We're talking about a complete shakeup. This is everything, everywhere, all at once. It will create shocks. But if it is to succeed, then we must bring the majority of people along the journey.
Wow, powerful stuff there. Just telling you the plan, telling you what they were going to do. But anyway, Paul, let's get over to you.
It's all for our good, isn't it? It's all for our well-being. They'll determine what is our well-being. See, this is essentially anti-democratic. This links into what else we're going to talk about tonight, which is the party conferences and the future, political future, because it's all ultimately politically driven. And behind it all is something called the blob. Now, not everyone seems to understand what the blob is. The blob is these people, you've just heard one there, civil servants, the corporations, the political class, the media, the establishment in the education system, the health system, throughout the state, the big state in a sense, and the media. The blob is the people who run this nationally and internationally. They have something called groupthink. They all believe in the same agenda. I mean, it's compulsory to believe in this agenda. And the agenda is essentially this. I mean, that lady just mentioned it there, net zero. That's become sort of holy grail for them, hasn't it? Absolute nonsense. The whole climate change agenda is absolute and utter nonsense. I'm a meteorologist, I know. There's no threat there's no man-made climate change. It's just idiotic to think that we can even affect the climate. Carbon dioxide is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. The more in the atmosphere, the faster plants grow, the more nutrients are created. But there is a carbon cycle which regulates carbon dioxide anyway. But the blob, getting back to the blob and their ideology. We just talked about net zero. They have other aspects of their ideology which weren't mentioned then, but were hinted at, such as redistribution of wealth. This is about the bureaucrats getting hold of money, your wealth, and deciding what they will spend it on. This is about the big state. This is the blob. These are the people who control our country and control the international system, our governmental system, and the international trading system. So, it's about big bureaucracies, and the bureaucracies run everything, and they have their own set ideology. And it's not based on human freedom. It's not based on human dignity. It's based on them controlling the media, people's mind, and the people's pocket. And they use it to advance themselves. Like an agenda there that wasn't mentioned by that lady is multiculturalism. This is really the transformation, demographic transformation, changing the people in our countries. We can see it all around us. We call it the Great Replacement. The indigenous peoples of these islands are being replaced by third world imports from Africa and India and the Middle East. And these people are a lot easier to control. They fit into this blob agenda of a bureaucracy controlling the population. It's fundamentally anti-democratic. Now, anyone who stands against it will be slayed, will be insulted. So if you just stand up for your national independence, your national culture, your national integrity, you'll be called all the slur words, racism, fascism, Nazism, whatever. Really, we just want to continue as a people, and we want it because we know that it's only the indigenous people that will fight back and demand freedom. Whereas the people that are important will just go along with it because they're being privileged by it. They're coming from cultures and countries which have no democracy, which are poorer. So they're grateful for anything they receive, the crumbs of the bureaucracy. And of course, there's another agenda which they didn't mention at all there, which is the moral agenda and the destruction of Christianity and the promotion of something which they call, I don't know, what is it? Individual freedom, liberty, libertarianism, so that people can, this illusion that somehow you can change your ethnicity, you can change your sexuality, you can offer various forms of sexuality, you can change your sex, trans. I mean, all this nonsense. This blob, the blob, get used to that term, the blob, it's the key term. This blob pushes these agendas all the time. This is their religion, really, their ideology. So they get rid of Christianity, a clear definition of what is right and what is wrong, and they start to determine themselves what is well-being. It's not democratic. We don't have a choice. Now, getting back to the politics, obviously there are people and political forces which have risen up against this control from above by these globalists, And, Donald Trump really, he's thrown a spanner in the works because he doesn't accept most of their narrative. But in this country, we have the emergence of reform. We've just had the party political conferences. And the whole, threat, somehow reform now they're presented as the threat to democracy. But in a sense, they embody any hope for democracy that we have in the future, because the popular will is democracy. Democracy means the rule of the majority. The blob doesn't want the majority to rule. It wants the judges to rule and the lawyers to rule. And these do-gooders, these people, the blob again, the people who are pursuing our well-being, they want to be in charge. They will determine what's good and what's bad. Not us. There's no democratic choice here. We're given an illusion of choice. And that's what we've had, hasn't it, up to now? We've had an illusion of choice. The Uni Party, the Labour Lab Con. I mean, the Conservatives now are claiming that they've actually, sort of been enlightened and realised what the danger is. But as soon as they get in power, they just submit to the blob and they just do the will of the blob. That's what Boris Johnson was all about. He just did the will of the governing system. Now, this governing system was all created in the Tony Blair era, in which the old constitution of Britain, which was ruled by Parliament, by a majority in the House of Commons, was overthrown and a bureaucracy was given power. You see, Parliament used to determine who were the judges. Not now. It's a bureaucratic committee, unelected bureaucratic committee, who determines who judges our laws, who judges over us, who judges what's right and wrong. It's now determined by bureaucrats. It's not determined by the majority of the country. And this is why we can't deport anybody, because these bureaucrats don't want any deportations. They want to bring about this demographic transformation. Now, obviously, reform have come and they've emerged as an opposition to this. Now, that is a minor miracle, really, because the first stage for reform was they had to build an infrastructure, a party big enough to take on the uni party, the Liberal Ab Con. And miraculously, they've done that. I think that the reform now have got 260,000 members. So it really is a mass movement. It's the first emergence of a mass movement since the Labour Party in the 1920s. The second hurdle they had to clear was, can they actually win elections? And last May, Reform won, I think it was 670 seats, and they've now got altogether approaching 900 seats. I mean, even today, there were 20 defectors from the Tories, 20 serving councillors left the Conservative Party and joined Reform just today. So they can win political power. They've taken control of 10 councils. So they've leapt over the second hurdle, and they are a threat, a real threat now to the status quo, because not only have they won council seats, they won a parliamentary by-election. They have 5 MPs, I think. They've had defectors. Danny Kruger defected from the Tories. So they've shown that they can actually win elections, and they are an electoral threat. And of course, in the opinion polls, they're 15 points ahead. This is absolutely extraordinary. This is unprecedented. We've never seen this in our political history. A party emerged like that and just pushed the traditional parties to one side. But the third hurdle, and this is where it gets really tricky, is can they take power? Can they win the general election? Because as we move closer to the general election, you will see all sorts of techniques being used by the Uniparty to thwart them. Like in the United States, they tried to thwart Donald Trump. I mean, one of them will be they'll start to investigate their donors. They'll use their media power to accuse them of X, Y, Z. But the problem is the Labour Party is making such an awful job of running our country. The economy is in such a mess that they're failing to get any popular liftoff. The people will just not listen to Keir Starmer. He's toxic. It's so bad now that Labour activists are unwilling to knock on people's doors because they're facing abuse on the doorstep. They're being barracked, they're being threatened, they're being verbally assaulted, and therefore the Labour activists won't even knock on the doorsteps now. They will post leaflets, but they won't actually interact with the voters. So Labour's in a dire situation. The Tories are woeful. The Lib Dems are a joke. So Reform have got a real opportunity here to actually win the general election. And so we go on to the fourth stage now, the crucial stage. What will they do with power? What will Reform do if they enter the Westminster bubble? What will the Reform do when they come face to face with the blob and say, we want to change the governing system, we want to change the laws of the land, we want to have the ability to control our borders and deport people? Then they will face the entrenched power of the state in this country, the deep state, as Stuart said earlier. And this will be a real ordeal because Tony Blair has so organised the system that everything has to go through the civil service. The civil service controls the agenda. It tells ministers what to think. We all know the programme, Yes Minster. You know, the Reform will come in. They're just going to be 350 MPs. They'll come in and say, we want to do this. And the civil servants will say, no, I don't think we'll be able to do it like that. Let's do it this way. They'll neutralise Reform. So there's going to have to be a real restructuring of the civil service. Because in this country, the civil service appoints itself. They're not appointed by an elected politicians. It's all appointed inwardly. They decide who gets the top jobs, who advises the ministers. And it's only the civil servants that can carry out actions. So if the civil service decide to scupper the Reform agenda, it's going to be very difficult for Reform to actually do anything. And of course, before they even take it to the civil service, they will face the judges, the laws. Anything they try and do just to stop immigration will be challenged in courts. There are a whole swathe of laws that can be used to stop them doing anything. And the judges Again, they're appointed, they're not elected, they're not accountable. They'll just say, oh, you can't deport him, you can't stop people coming in, you can't change this migration, you can't change this refugee agenda. They'll block it left, right, and centre. Now, Reform may hope to leave the European Court of Human Rights. They may even leave the UN Refugee Convention 1951, but they will still have the Human Rights Act, which is in Britain and already in our parliament. That will be in place to stop them. So they're going to have to change the whole legal program of our state and of our government. Now, just imagine how difficult that's going to be, because they're going to face the House of Lords. Any time they got 250 MPs, if they get that many, this is how many they're going to need if they're going to change anything. Anything they decide to change in the Commons can be challenged, can be watered down by the Lords, can be slowed down. And there will be massive opposition to any changes that Reform try and bring forth. Now, what will be the nature of that opposition? It'll be on the streets, because the blob isn't just the elite. That's just the sort of the edge, the prick of the spear. It's got a hinterland, the public sector unions,
The unions.
the media, the ethnic minorities who've been privileged by the whole minority agenda. They will come on the streets to stop any Reform changes. So therefore, Reform are going to need a counterforce. When the pushback comes, if they get power, when the pushback comes, they're going to need the people behind them, a popular movement. And this is where Reform really need to wake up, because they're going to need political foot soldiers on the streets. And this is where the nationalists come in. This is where the patriots come in. This is where people like who went to Tommy Robinson's United Kingdom, the demo, come in. These people have got to be behind Reform, and they've got to be there to keep pressure. Because the truth is, if Reform are going to stop one immigrant or going to deport any of these illegals or asylum seekers, stop the whole asylum seeker system, they're going to face horrendous opposition, and they're going to need they're going to need the people to overcome it. John, do you get the picture?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, of course. And through them and what's happening now, the full political landscape is changing. I was last week. I went to 2 meetings in Tameside, meeting up with some potential candidates and stuff like that. And Labour are on the toes. Labour really are on the toes. And I think they're only going to win in particular areas, but areas where it's been to and fro between Labour or Tories, not going to win them areas. They're not going to win them. The political landscape is in absolute turmoil up here in North Manchester. I go on about this all the time, but it's true, guys, and it's a combination of the Reform, independence, political parties, activism, stuff we're doing, hyper-local parties as well within towns and stuff like that, and other people getting politically active. And, you know, like Pat said at the beginning, we said this is a time, these next few years are crucial. Whoever's in power, whatever's happening is crucial for us and for these parties. And, you know, I can't agree enough with what Paul said. You know, we've had it. We've physically had it where somebody's not been put forward because he's not got a rich dad and a donor. We've had that within our party, our latest candidate, you know. And, you know, a lot of people will say, are they for the working class? They claim to be, but the evidence that I see that we have and that's happened is no, you know. And it really winds me up, that. And of course, they've had defections from already serving MPs who are already been in power 10 years plus and messing up the country. And it just doesn't sit right with me. It really doesn't. But there are means to an end. And I'm not just going to say Reform. George Galloway's poking in. He's running candidates. He's putting political pressure on. We've just seen him get arrested for coming back from Russia. And he's been there dozens of times. He's never had no called to, and he got pulled coming back. So even gorgeous George is putting pressure on our government and the political thing. All these demonstrations are doing a lot. This raise a flag thing is boosting everyone up. This is the time, guys. This is the absolute time to get involved in politics and to do something for your community. People want to see that. We don't see it. Like Paul said, you're more likely as a Labour candidate to get abused on the door now than like 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, you get shaking hands and invite you in for afternoon tea. None of that now. None of that for the Labour Party candidate or the Tories. So the political landscape's changing, and it's changing for the better. Thank you very much, 303 watching, large chunk off Twitter there. Please follow our links, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for commenting and stuff like that. Any questions? Yes, we do, Mickey. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And we've got some lined up as well. Thank you very much. But yeah, so, you know, the landscape's changing, and we're here, and we're making a difference, and we're showing people that we can do that. Important year for us next year. If you're new to the stream, please follow our links, like and subscribe. Our email's at the bottom, and we do have a PayPal, and I'll put that in the chat so it looks like a link for leaflets and the such. But yeah, they've got the blob. They've got to get past the blob. I don't think they'll get past it. I think they'll end up being run by the blob or having to do what they say, Paul, because the blob's more powerful than any single UK political party. Yeah.
Well, you know, there's another issue here in that many Conservatives are now moving over to Reform. And that's likely. I mean, it's turning into a flood now. As I say, 20 went today. Now, the Tory party was always a broad coalition between its right wing, which went to Enoch Powell with Tory nationalists, to its, you know, its ultra liberals, its Michael Heseltines who are pro EU. I think he called Reform fascist today, which is really interesting. That's desperation, isn't it? Using those labels. But the problem with Reform is that they're reluctant to embrace the populists, the popular will, the true patriots. But they're going to need them. They're not going to defeat the blob or get anywhere unless parties like the National Housing Party and, you know, other more radical right-wing parties. We've got the perspective on this, you see. We understand what's coming. Reform think they can just have a palace coup, they can change the system, and they can get these policies through. It's not going to happen. This is going to they're going to require a revolution. Just to save our nation now, to stop this demographic transformation, which is already very well advanced, they're going to need a political revolution. And this is where the likes of us come in, because we're up for the fight. We've got the experience, we've got the perspective, we've got the right ideology. We understand the way power politics work in this country and who the ruling class are, what the blob is, and how it's going to be a battle at local government level, at every level, at senior level, on the street. It's going to require a revolution. If Reform can get a majority, and we're still a long way from that, it's going to require a revolution to get any of their policies through the system. Because we're going to have to overthrow the governing system in this country. And we need people like the National Housing Party, which are willing to speak the unspeakable. See, the problem with Reform is they're still part of cancel culture. They're still saying, oh, yeah, no, you're too extreme, or your views are not acceptable, or no, we don't want this harsh truth. You know, we want to pretend that everything's hunky-dory and we can just carry on as normal. This is all a fallacy. This is all nonsense. Reform have got to allow people, in a sense, the vanguard, the nationalist vanguard, who've got real perspective on how we can overthrow this system and how we can get back, restore Britain to what it was. I mean, it's restoration we're on about. They've got to be brought into the broad coalition. And this is what Trump has achieved in America with MAGA, is he didn't exclude the patriots. He didn't exclude the nationalists. He welcomed them to come on board, because ultimately we are the only people who can push through this agenda. What's your take on it, Stuart?
Well, I'd like to skip back a bit. I know it's not quite the blob where I'm starting, but I found out something the other week about judges. Now, when you look at a judge sat there with it in his gowns and his wigs, his or her, you expect them to be of high intelligence, that they've gone through years and years of law school and studying law and studying case law. And it used to be that way, that somebody would go to law school for years, then they would practice law, work their way up, and through their judicious work and being good at their job and knowing their job, brought about good outcomes for people. You had somebody in charge who knew what they were doing and knew what they were on about. I only found out recently that changed just after Tony Blair started, is that they reduced it. So you could go and be what's called a paralegal. So you go and work for a lawyer, you go and work for a solicitor for a couple of years. Once you've done that, you can then take like a fast track up to being a judge. So suddenly you've got a judge that's not learned, and then like justices of what's called the King's Council now, was the Queen's Council. Guess who was Queen's Counsel? Starmer. So he went through a process. Yes, he did go to law school and worked his way up. But how do you go from setting the law to being in government? So you've changed the laws. I mean, for one example, is that he gave himself a nice little tax break. So the meritocracy of the people that we've got has been lowered, not just in politicians, the judicial system, our policing system, even our social services. Everything's been levelled up, equity. That doesn't mean bringing everybody up to a higher standard so that we've got more meritocracy, more people that can do a better job and can push each other to do a better job. No, the equity brings everybody down, so you lower the standards. And that's what we've been doing for years. We've allowed it through being complacent because we've had a nice cushy life, you know. Okay, we've had some tough years since the war. You know, I can remember in the 70s having power cuts and candle lights and, you know, going down and scavenging wood for the fire. You know, and slowly but surely, as life's got softer, we've let our standards slip. So what worries me, and I'll skip now to reform, is what worries me is we've got a load of failed politicians who know that they've failed. That's why they're ditching ship. Are they ditching ship because, oh, Reform have got much better policies and I agree with them? Or is it more of a case of, oh, the old rats are leaving the ship, I think I better fucking join them?
What's
Do you know what I mean?
Me?
Yeah, exactly. And then you go to the Lords. Let's pick one Lord. Years ago, there was miners' strikes. Maggie Thatcher got to shut down the coal mines, sort of bit of early climate thing going on there. But it was to take over the unions, and the unions fight. And Scargill, he was the union hero, but he was the villain. Where did he end up? He ended up in the Lords with a lifetime peerage. So he'll be getting thousands of pounds a week, whether he turns up or not, whether he actually takes any interest in any of the bills, goes to any. I've watched the Lords, and there are a few good ones in there, but for the most part, it's empty. Nobody's there for the debates. Nobody's there for the debate on digital ID. No, because there is no debate. But you get the assisted dying, for example. There was hardly anybody in the debates in the Lords. There was 2 hours of debate in the Houses of Parliament when they did 7 years ago. I mean, how long ago was it the Fox ban? Was that 25 years ago?
That was Blair, wasn't it? That was 98. That was early on in the Blair government, that.
Yeah, so 25, 28
years.
years. Yeah, 25, 28 years ago. They debated for over 700 hours to save the foxes. What about us? So we've now got a political system that doesn't, and excuse my language, they don't give a fuck about us.
Stuart, can I just say what you brought up there about assisted dying, right? Which is encouraging people to commit suicide, really. Legalising suicide and saying that suicide is okay and a good thing, when it obviously isn't. It's a really evil thing. Now, the two Reform MPs, Richard Tice and I think Sarah Pollen or something, they voted in favour of assisted dying. I was shocked.
Yeah.
You see, what's happened obviously there is these Reform MPs are already being absorbed into the blob, into the Westminster bubble. It's going to corrupt them very quickly. Unless they have a radical edge, unless they have real truth speakers, Reform are just going to be absorbed into the blob and neutralised. That's why it's important that we have parties like the National Housing Party, which is willing to speak the truth. We need to give any government that's coming in to overthrow the Lib Lab con and save this country, because we're on the edge of destruction. We know that now. It's an existential issue now. We're seeing the amount of immigrants coming in, the transformation of our society, just ethnically, is absolutely horrendous now. If we're going to save it all, we've got to have truth speakers, and we've got to make sure that any government that comes in, alternative government, a reform government, does not compromise with the blob. This is the problem with all these Tories joining, Tory MPs. They're already compromised with the blob. They've already been part of the Westminster bubble. Now, obviously, this is the big issue as well, is that the blob is international. So it involves the EU. Starmer and the Uni Party, they want to get back into the EU. They're already manoeuvring that. It involves China as well. You've talked about, digital ID and social control. This is all on the Chinese model. China now, economically, is the rival of America, and they're buying influence. I mean, they may well have bought the Starmer government. There's all internationalist agendas that are being pushed, and this will threaten reform. But we've got to have truth. We've got to have truth speakers that can give this deeper narrative about what's going on in order to stop these people manipulating the British people. Because that's what all the media does now. All the media does is push a control narrative which pushes the blob's agenda. Reform are too willing to go along with it. Farage went along with COVID. He actually recommended Blair to be head of, control the whole thing. As he got the radical edge to make a reform government effective in stopping the destruction of Britain. What's your take, John?
No. After all that you said and what we've seen off them, I don't think they're gonna survive against the blob. Like you said, they're taking in pieces of the blob already, Paul. They're being corrupted already, and it's worse than an horror movie. It's worse than an horror movie. But I just want to let everyone know we're having a Christmas social. If you want to come to it, there's an email at the bottom there. But invite only, really, guys. You know what I mean? but we're having a Christmas social. They'll be in December, first couple of weeks of December, during the week as well. And if you want to come, get involved. I'm going to be there. There's going to be quite a few heads there, because when I come down, there's a couple of heads who will be coming over anyway. I'm going to get Andy Marie. She'll be over, and I'll get her to do a nice speech. She always does good speeches, does Andy. Of course, myself, Pat and Paul, and hopefully some other top people. So if you want to come, Christmas social, there's our email there. Invite only, guys, honestly, personally.
Well, it's going to be on a Thursday, isn't it, John? And it's going to be in London. But people are welcome if we know you and you let us know. And you're more than welcome to come, really.
But yeah, so please get to it. And we have done some really good socials as well. So please get involved. And thank you, everyone in the chat. Thank you to everyone on X who is watching. If you like the channel, you like what we've talked about, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button. Donate to us if you want to. And we need thousands. We need tens of thousands of leaflets, guys. That's what we need. Tens of thousands of leaflets. That's what we need. And we need to get them out. And while I'm down in London, I'm going to be doing some leafleting myself, because I'm not just going to come for one day. I'm having a few days, me. Please subscribe to us, join the chat. Any questions, there's our email. You can easily get in contact with me and Pat if you go onto the website. And please sign up to our emails on the website as well, guys. I'll put the link into the chat. If you want to say something, if you've got any articles or anything you want to write, tell us a story, please send them to us. We can sort them out, we can get them on the site. Yeah, and obviously I'm guessing it'll be something to do with whatever, but maybe we can talk about Christianity next week, because there's been a lot of things going on, and I'm being told again of people who I know who aren't politically involved that more people are going to church. You know what I mean? And getting more faith in them. So maybe we can talk about Christianity in the next stream. We can talk about what's happening in the rest of the world with Christianity, because we know there's Christian people being killed. Well, you wouldn't know if you join our mainstream media, but we know that there's Christianity is under a threat across the world. We've talked about this a couple of times, but you know, I'm feeling really good, and I think we should bring faith into it and do a bit of a Christian themed stream next week. So thank you very much to the guests. Last words now, lads. We've got about 7 minutes left. Stuart?
I'd just like to thank everybody who's taken the time to switch on and listen in. Like John said, take a look at us, see what you think. It is the time to get politically motivated. Yeah, we can't do anything nationally as a little party as ourselves, but we can put pressure on, and we can work at a local level to try and work on local matters that matter to local people. But I know that most things do connect on a national level. So please take the time, have a look at our website. They're pretty common sense policies, nothing too radical, you know. And going back to reform, I'll hark on what both of you said, is that they've sucked in from the blob. You only have to look at where Richard Tice went this week. A Christian going and putting the yarmulke on, or whatever it's called, and kissing the wall. I'm afraid that's where apart from Switzerland, that's where the banking happens. So we do need to look at international banking. I know there's the Bank of International Settlements and the International Monetary Fund Foundation, or whatever it's called. They're part of the big blob, the big blob that run everything and keep us in a usury debt system for the rest of our lives. That's the way it is at the moment, unless we start to embrace knowledge, open ourselves to new knowledge, learn, connect locally with people, try and spread your knowledge and try and spread some goodness and happiness, because we
Well,
need
what we
some of
need to
that.
do, Stuart, and this is important, we must win elections. This is why reform is so important, because they're changing the dynamics of our political system. Whether they can overcome the blob is another issue, but they're overcoming the uni party, the Lib Lab Con. And this is an opening for us. We've got to be part of this radical right-wing edge, which is like winning local elections and giving it putting forward a different agenda and exposing the blob and the way it controls us all. Now, we're not the only small party. As you say, George Galloway's got his force. We're going to join, what is it, John? The group...
ADF, Alliance of Democracy and Freedom.
The Alliance for Democracy and Freedom. Of course, there's also UKIP, the Heritage Party. There's all these small parties who are actually developing ideas and developing a critique of what's going on. We need to get together and we need to become a united force to save this country. And of course, this is happening. There's amazing things happening in France at the moment. France is in meltdown, but the nationalists are on the march because the people demand a voice. We've got to resurrect real democracy, the control of the majority. See, the whole system that Blair has built, and was built actually after the Second World War, was about denying us, the people, a voice and control of our own destiny. We have to reclaim it. We still have the franchise. We still have the right to vote. We still have the right to organise as parties. We still have the right to shake up the status quo. And we've got to get back into that Westminster bubble and blow it up and start again. There has to be a political revolution, guys, and we're part of that revolution. All of us, not just the National Housing Party, every concerned citizen. You've got to get active. You've got to get involved in local politics. See, these leaflets, they go through doors, they give people hope. People can see a different agenda. They can see good policies, common sense policies that they agree with. They can see that there is a party in this country which cares for the ordinary British people and which cares for our nation. It's great that they're raising the flags. I mean, I was in Liverpool today in Park Road, and they put Union flags right along Park Road. It looks fantastic. This is the people asserting themselves again. And if you're truly going to assert yourself, get involved with the National Housing Party, stand in local elections, get involved with distributing leaflets, get involved with spreading our ideas, get involved with taking on the establishment, because we're going to have to win, guys. If we don't win, we all become slaves and we'll all be pushed out. We want to preserve what we've inherited from the past, which is good. It's good. Democracy is a good thing. Let's make it active, guys. Let's get we've got elections in just over 8 months in May, and let's really rock the boat. We've got to totally destroy this Starmer government because it's a tyranny against the people. John.
Thank you, Paul. Stuart, were you going to say something a minute ago?
I'd just like to chip in with a little bit of good news. The little town across the road from me, about 4 miles down the road, they put all their flags up in the centre of town, and the police took them down. 24 hours later, guess where they were? They were back up. Back up. Keep them up. Keep it going.
Big shout out to any of the lads who've been to Gary Neville's hotel and today. Paul and Jay have been down in the van putting some flags up, and I've seen other guys at his football club putting some flags up. Straight white men, Gary, built the entire world, mate. Entire world. And there's nothing wrong with being straight and being a man. So thank you very much. God bless everyone. We'll see you next week.
Hey, look at the buttons, look! Look, I fought for this fucking country, right? I fought for this country. I'm a colour. I fought for this country. I can't get back. You're Nazis. You're Nazis. You're Nazis. My dad fought for this country. I fought for this country. I fought for this country. And this is what I'm getting. This is what I'm getting.